What's the number one reason that podcasts fail? As the owner of a podcast booking agency, this is the question that I get asked a lot. And where I want to go with this is starting off with a statistic that 90% of podcasts don't make it past their 10th episode. So, what does that mean? Why do 90% of people give up before they even hit that 11th episode or earlier on their podcast? Well, there's a few reasons. One, lacking in consistency. Two, not having any sort of backfill. And three, having the wrong expectations that you think you're going to go out there and start a podcast. And within the first 10 episodes, you're going to see a ton of success from it. Yes, that's the case for some podcasts, but it's not always going to be like that for every podcast that's out there. Now, when I was looking at my own podcast and when I was launching it, I knew I wanted to release 5 episodes the first day, and then I wanted to have a backfill of 5 episodes. So that would give me 5 weeks where if I wanted to take a vacation, if I didn't want to work for a month, I would have these pre recorded episodes on the back end. So I knew I wanted to start a podcast this year, and I knew I had to have 10 episodes pre recorded before I even went live with the podcast. So what that meant is I started planning in January and started recording my interviews. And then once March came around, I was ready to release the podcast. And that's what I highly recommend to anyone is having that backfill where now we're probably 6 to 8 weeks out at this point where if I interview someone today, their interview is going to be put out 2 months from now and gives me a lot more runway in case something comes up in my life where I just don't have the time to record interviews for a week or two. I have to reschedule. Having that backfill gives me that flexibility. When it comes to starting the podcast itself, it's really going to take 6 to 12 months, if not longer, before you start to see results from your show. So, with that said, people will start and they'll do 10 episodes. And after those 10 episodes, they think that they're going to see a ton of success. Where, again, it could take a year, 6 months, a year, even longer for you to start seeing any results from your podcast. So, you're going to have to be in it for the long haul. And this isn't even to say if you're thinking about going back to talking about the backlog and the backfill of episodes. I didn't even have my podcast and I was able to interview guests on my show, and that's definitely possible. Yes, it's easier to interview guests once you have your podcast, but I reached out to acquaintances, people I know, people I had talked to in the past, even particular clients that I wanted to go down that route to interview on my podcast. So there's that possibility for me to start my show without even to record episodes before I even had the podcast go live. But overall, the number one reason that I see podcasts fail is just due to a lack of inconsistency. You release an episode this week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then twice in 1 week. Your audience wants to know, okay, I'm driving to work on a Monday morning. I'm going to have this podcast to listen to. Okay, I'm driving to work on Wednesday. I have this podcast to listen to. You want to stick to a set schedule and you want to be in it for the long haul. So you want to release one episode, say, every single Monday, and you want to be consistent with that throughout 52 weeks a year and then going forward beyond that. So the number one reason that I see that podcasts fail is really just a lack of consistency more than anything else.